I hate it when Julian acts like that. It makes me want to fight him. But I didn't say one word. I just went away. In the night, I woke up and went downstairs. Julian's book was lying on the couch in the living room. I picked it up. I couldn't read it all, but I could see it was about tracks. It had pictures of the hoof and paw prints of almost every kind of animal. It showed deer tracks and raccoon tracks, the tracks of zebras and giraffes and elephants. I looked at the living room window. I could hear the wind. I could almost hear many animals outside. Very quietly, I opened the door and went out. I still had the book in my hand. There was a full moon. I could see my own shadow on the grass, but I couldn't see any night animals. I looked for tracks, but there weren't any. In real life, I really had seen raccoon tracks once. I looked through Julian's book until I found some. I decided to copy them. I found a sharp stick and went to where our driveway divides our land in two parts. The driveway isn't paved. It's pebbly and sandy. Raccoon tracks looked almost like human. Hands with narrow fingers and long sharp claws for fingernails. I stood on the grass and used my stick to copy them along the edge of the driveway. I walked on the grass to the street. Then I walked on the paved street to the other side of our driveway. I copied more raccoon tracks on that side, so it looked like the raccoon had turned around and gone back to the street. I hid my drawing stick in the hedge and went back in the house. I was careful not to leave any footprints. I put Julian's book back on the couch just the way he had left it. I climbed the stairs, tiptoed past Mom and Dad's room, and went back to bed. In the morning, I went down to breakfast. Julian was running into the kitchen with his book in his hand. "Dad, Dad," he shouted, "a raccoon was here last night." "Really?" my dad said. He went out with Julian to study the tracks and went along. Julian showed Dad his book. When Dad bent down to look at the tracks, I tried to look at Julian's book too, but Julian wouldn't let me. Whenever I tried to, he covered it with his arms and poked me in the ribs with his elbow. My dad stood up. "It sure does look like a raccoon was here," he said. "Sometimes those little raccoons come around to eat food out of the garbage cans. From now on, we'll need to keep the lids on tight." The next night I woke up. I looked at the clock that sits up on top of the brick on my night table. It was 1 a.m. Julian was asleep with his pillow over his head. I went down to the living room. I found his book on top of the TV, opened to a page on African safaris. I went down to the basement and got my dad's hammer. I took it and the book outside. The moon was not quite as big as the night before, but there was plenty of light for working. Every few feet I matched up small spots of sandy ground with the hammer. Then I rounded them out just right. I stood up and compared them to the picture in Julian's book. They looked the way they were supposed to, just like zebra tracks. Zebras leave hoof prints like horses. Their tracks are deeper in the ground than raccoon tracks. That's why I used the hammer. In the morning, Julian was so excited he was yelling, "Mommy and Dad! Huey! Come look! There was a zebra here last night!" We all ran outside. My dad studied Julian's book and the tracks. "Hard to believe," my dad said. "But it sure does look that way." "Could it have been a horse?" my mom asked. "All the horses around here wear shoes," my dad said. "These tracks don't show shoe prints." Gloria came over and saw the tracks. "Amazing," she said. She and Julian decided to make a zebra trap. They made a cage out of straight sticks tied together with a rope. I brought them the rope from the basement. "We should put carrots in the cage to attract the zebra," Gloria said. So Julian did. He asked permission to sleep on the front porch so he could watch for the zebra and catch it. Gloria got permission to sleep over and help. Julian asked if I wanted to sleep downstairs with them to watch for the zebra. "We could take turns watching and sleeping," he said. I said there wasn't room for us three on the porch. Besides, I was tired. But in the night, I woke up, I looked out the bedroom window. The moon was not as big as or as bright as the night before. I went to the basement and got a hammer, a chisel, a flashlight. I crossed the living room on silent feet and peeked out the window to the porch. Julian was on the floor in his sleeping bag with his pillow over his head. Gloria was sitting up with her back against the wall, facing the zebra cage, but her head was tipped over on her shoulder. She was asleep. On tiptoe, I went out on the porch. The porch has one board that squeaks. I didn't step on it. The tracking book just touched Julian's hand. I put the hammer, the chisel, and the flashlight under my left arm. I was scared I would drop them. I bent down very carefully. I reached out with my right hand. Very gently, I took the book. Julian and Gloria did not wake up. I walked to the zebra cage. I set my tools down on the grass. Carrots are one of my favorite foods. I picked up the carrots in the cage. I bit off half and ate it. I used the flashlight to check the rest of the carrots for tooth marks I had made on the other half. I worked on them with my fingernail to make them look bigger. Then I put the flashlight down and put the carrot back in the trap. I used the hammer to make more zebra tracks into the trap and back out again. I checked with the light from the flashlight. They were okay. When I finished, I found a fallen pine bowl. I used it to brush out my own tracks. I went to the edge of the street. At the edge of the street, there was a narrow, sandy place. There was room for some good tracks, elephant tracks. Elephants are really heavy. Their tracks sink in. I used the chisel to soften up the ground before I made the tracks with my hammer. I made fat, round tracks with bumps for the toe marks, 5 each on the front feet and 3 on the back, just like the picture in Julian's book. Afterwards, I shined the flashlight on them. They looked good. The zebra was here, Gloria said in the morning. He was here, but I fell asleep. Huey, you should have helped us watch for him. I'm too little, I said. I'm afraid of zebras. Julian and Gloria took my mom and dad and me outside and showed us the tracks and the marks in the carrots. My dad studied the carrots. Those are tooth marks, all right, he said. My mom took the carrot and examined it. Some kind of tooth mark, she said, but she never finished what she was going to say because Julian was shouting and pointing to the street. There are more tracks out here, huge ones. We all went running to see. They look big enough to be elephant tracks, Gloria said. My mom said, what I don't understand is why all these animals come into our house. Do you have any idea, Huey? Everybody looked at me. I had to say something. It's really strange, I said. I am a tracker and a scout. I am strong and I am silent. I know many things, but I keep them to myself. My trip to Africa. I looked up. The sky was blue, perfectly blue. I wanted to know why. I went down to my dad's workshop in the basement. He was working on Julian's bicycle. Why? I began. Can it wait a minute, Huey? My dad said. I'm trying to figure this blaming thing out. I went upstairs to the den. My mom was sitting at the desk. Mom, why is the sky? I began. Oh, Huey, my mom said. I was adding numbers in my head for income tax, and now I have to start all over again. I went outside. Julian and Gloria were kneeling on the lawn, working on a new improved zebra trap. Julian, I said, why? Look at this, Julian interrupted. We have the carrot partway under a rock. A rope is partway under the rock, too. When the zebra picks up the carrot, he'll move the rock and loosen the rope. That will make the cage door fall shut and we'll catch him. What if the zebra is too smart? I asked. What do you know about zebras? Julian asked. A real zebra would kick that cage to pieces, I said. I went back into the house and dived onto the couch. I didn't want to know about the sky anymore. It's not blue all the time. Anyhow, I thought, most of the times it isn't. So who cares? I stared at the living room wall. It had some interesting things on it. Things from Africa my mom had hung up there. A straw hat from Ghana with green and yellow designs in it, and a cloak from Mali with bright blue and orange and white stripes, and a walking stick from, we're not sure exactly where, with the head of a lion carved on it. I kept staring at the things. The things kept staring back at me, especially the lion's head on the walking stick. Pretty soon I realized something. I wanted to go to Africa. I wanted to see where the wild zebras are. If I lived in Africa, I would be happy. I went into the kitchen and made 3 peanut butter sandwiches. I put them in a plastic bag and put the plastic bag in my backpack. Then I went back into the living room. I stood on a chair and got the hat, the cloak, and the walking stick off their hooks. I put the hat on my head. It was too big, so I put the cloak over my head first and then the hat on top of it. That way it fit just fine. I tried holding the walking stick. It felt just right. I went out the door. I passed right by Julian and Gloria. They were working so hard on the trap that they didn't even see me. I went down the street. The hat was good. It kept the sun out of my eyes. The cloak was good too. It felt warm. The walking stick was the best of all. It seemed to want to go places without my even moving it. Once, someone had carried it all over Africa. He had leaned on it when he was tired. He had used it to cross rivers when he needed to. He had used it as a weapon. Right where my hand held it, it was smooth and shiny. The African hand that used to hold it had polished it for me. If I held on to it and didn't let go, it would show me the way to Africa. I walked 8 blocks. I got to the mall where the gas station is. I know the man who works at the gas station. His name is George. I asked him the way to Africa. It's east of here, he said, but be careful of the traffic. I walked the way he pointed, toward where the sun was coming from. I used my stick to climb the hill above the gas station. I know the man who works on people's lawns up there. His name is Oscar. He was planting tulips. That's a nice stick you've got. Nice hat and cape too, Oscar said. Thank you, I said. Do you happen to know the way to Africa? Oscar pointed. It's west of here, he said. He was pointing me right back where I came from. George at the gas station just told me it's east, I said. You can get there going east too, Oscar agreed. I kept pointing the way I had been going. My legs were getting tired. I saw a woman sweeping her steps. I've seen her lots, but I don't know her name. She looks old and wise. She looks like she should know the way to Africa. It's south of here, she said, and she pointed south and east, or south and west. You could do north too, but that would mean crossing the polar ice cap. Everybody keeps telling me a different way to Africa, I said. Somebody's telling me lies.